Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of biology's most incredible engineering feats. How on earth a simple ball of cells builds a complex body, complete with a brand new nervous system, all within the first few hours of life.
All right, here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the embryo's very first puzzle. Then we'll see how it forges its three foundational layers. After that, we get to witness the amazing birth of the nervous system. Zoom way in on the tiny cellular engines that make it all happen. And finally, we'll look at how completely different paths can lead to the exact same body plan. So let's kick things off with that first major hurdle. After an embryo gets itself organized into a simple ball of cells, it hits a huge architectural challenge. How do you build something incredibly complex out of something so, well, simple? And this, right here, is the central mystery we're going to unpack. How do we possibly get from a simple, two-layered sheet of cells to a structure that has a front, a back, an inside, and an outside? Not to mention the very beginnings of a brain and a spinal cord. You know, you can think of it like a very basic sketch at this point. There's an outer layer, the ectoderm, which is eventually going to become the skin and the nervous system. And then you've got this combined inner layer, the mesendoderm, which has all the potential to become muscles, bones, organs, you name it. The problem is, it's not sorted out yet. So that leads us right to the next step, forging the three foundational layers. I mean, to really build a body, that simple two-layer setup just isn't going to cut it. The embryo absolutely has to create a third, supercritical middle layer. This is where the real construction starts. And here they are, the big three. You've got the ectoderm on the outside, the endoderm on the very inside, and then, squeezed right in between them, is the all-important mesoderm. These three layers are the foundational tissues. Literally every single part of the body is going to come from one of them. But here's where things get really, really clever. It turns out there isn't just one way to build this three-layered structure. Evolution has come up with different but equally brilliant engineering solutions to solve this exact problem. Let's take a look at two of them. Okay, now this is fascinating. What you're seeing are two totally different methods to get the same job done. In this primitive creature, Amphioxus, the inner layer literally forms these little pouches that just pinch right off to create that middle layer. But in amphibians and birds, the process is completely different. Their inner layer just splits, kind of like peeling apart two sheets of paper. Pouching versus splitting, two different paths to the exact same three-layered blueprint. Wild, right? So once those three layers are locked in, the embryo gets to work on its next monumental project, building the central command center. This process, the great neural fold, is the exact moment the brain and spinal cord begin to form. The whole process is called neurulation, and its main job is to create something called the neural tube. And, you probably guessed it, just like we saw with the germ layers, evolution has found more than one way to pull this off. The key difference really comes down to the sequence of events. So in the simple Amphioxus, the strategy is to first define the territory. The little patch of cells that's going to become the nervous system actually separates itself from the rest of the outer layer first. Only after it's become its own independent sheet does it start to fold up and fuse into a tube. So the order is separate, then fold. But in vertebrates like us, the whole logic is flipped. Here, the neural plate starts to fold while it's still connected to the outer skin layer. The folds rise up, they meet in the middle, and they fuse. Only after the tube is completely formed does it finally detach and sink below the surface. So it's fold, then separate. A total reversal of the sequence. But the end result is exactly the same. All this talk about folding and separating, it brings up a really fascinating question. We're talking about entire sheets of tissue bending and rolling into these perfect little tubes. So how does that even happen? What are the tiny engines powerful enough to drive this incredible cellular origami? Well, the answer isn't some big external force. Nope, it's all happening from within the cells themselves. They are packed with microscopic engines. The cells change how sticky they are to each other, which lets them separate. Tiny protein cables called microfilaments start to contract, squeezing the tops of the cells and creating these perfect little hinge points. And at the same time, internal scaffolds called microtubules get longer, forcing the cells to stretch out and helping the whole sheet buckle and bend. So the main takeaway is that this folding isn't passive at all. It is an active, highly coordinated process. The cells themselves are the engineers, using their own internal machinery to physically sculpt the embryo from the inside out.
It's really incredible stuff. So we've seen these different strategies for creating layers and for building a nervous system. Let's pull back now and see how all of these different paths lead to one single universal plan, and how it tells a much bigger story about life on Earth.
Whether it's by pouching or splitting, separating then folding, or folding then separating, the outcome is totally non-negotiable. Every single one of these embryos achieves the exact same structural milestones, and this reveals a really deep and powerful principle in developmental biology.
And this right here is the universal destination. All those different evolutionary paths lead to this: an embryo with 3 germ layers, a body cavity for its organs to grow in, and a neural tube that will become its central nervous system. This isn't just some random checklist. This is the establishment of the fundamental body plan that connects a fish, a frog, a bird, and you and me. Ultimately, this journey from a simple 2-layered structure to a complex body plan is a story of our shared ancestry and evolution's amazing ingenuity. It shows us that there's more than one way to solve a biological problem, but the fundamental blueprint for a vertebrate body is a theme so successful it has been preserved for hundreds of millions of years. It really is a story that connects us all.